action. I can't get no call to action, but I try, and I try, and I try, and I try.
Hello and welcome to Call to Action, the go-to podcast for anyone trying to make sense of the world of marketing, advertising and beyond. In an industry that is a minefield of utter bollocks, we aim to capture our heroes and allies from the front line to have a chin-wag with. It's like Pokemon Go, with the single but vital exception that it's not a short-term bandwagon of shite. It's brought to you by Gasp, and I'm Giles Edwards, co-founder and MD. Today I've caught Gemma Higgins, an exceptionally talented freelance writer and creative problem solver. Gem rules the Twitters with her unrivaled gift of creating the perfect GIF for any moment. A proud sausage dog mum who has listened to more podcasts than you and I have had hot dinners, Gem is also a strong mental health advocate. And her Sit Fucking Still donation to Isolated Talks, a fundraising campaign for the Samaritans, is neck and neck with Rory Sutherland, one of the most watched and captivating talks. Previous guest and mutual friend Ryan Woolman loved it so much he bestowed her with the industry prize that's now more relevant than a D&AD Writing for Advertising award, a Call to Action episode dedication. Gem says, words have always been central to everything. It's my therapy. I used to write voraciously as a child and make up plays and stories and spend hours in my room on this old knackered typewriter handed down by my grandparents. Welcome to the show, Gem.
Hey, that was unexpectedly amazing. Thank you very much. And it's a good job I got that accolade from Ryan, because there's no way I'm winning any D&AD things anytime soon.
Amazing. Right, 7 quick-fire questions, Gem. Tea or coffee?
Oh, coffee. Oh, but decaf.
Decaf? Ugh.
I know, sorry. Brown water.
Listening or reading?
Reading.
Sausage dog or sausage roll?
Sausage dog.
Eat your greens or hot milk?
Eat your greens. Oh, shit, no. Oh, fuck. No, hot milk. Hot milk. I'm sorry, hot milk. Sorry, I thought you meant the actual drink, and then I was confused. Yeah, no, hot milk. It's fucking amazing.
Fine art or fine wine?
A specific type of wine, but it doesn't necessarily need to be fine. But wine over art.
Chris Evans or Jane Evans?
Jane Evans.
Easy. Right, favourite creek, last one. Schitt's Creek or Dawson's Creek?
Shit.
We knew that one. So Gem, tell me how it all started. What was your first job, and how did it all start?
Oh, my first job. I was thinking about this the other day. I worked in a costume shop, like fancy dress costumes, like a hiring shop. It was amazing because I was obsessed with musical theatre. That was always what I wanted to do. I always wanted to do musical theatre. I was a dancer. I did all the plays, all that sort of shit. I did ballet from a really young age, so that was always my thing. So, and I was doing art textiles at the same time. So I'd always done both sides of that. So I worked in this really old little musty shop full of incredible handmade stuff that had been handed down from years and years and years. And when it was very quiet, which tended to be a lot of days, we'd just go and try everything on, and then somebody come into the shop and we'd have to serve them kind of dressed as Victorian wenches or something. But it was great. I loved it. That was my first ever job. And then when I came out of uni, where I did fine art, it was I came out at the time where it was either be an artist and make no money at all, and that wasn't really an option, or just get a job. And where I kind of knew anything about was media, so I ended up in media sales. So my first job was selling advertising to on a farmer portfolio, actually, for Haymarket, selling display ads to the non-big core agency spend. So like the non-Pfizers of the world, anybody who kind of pocketed in those little small ads that everyone was like, oh my God, who designed that? Those really little ones. So that was my first ever job. Yeah, and then I moved through recruitment, sales, account management, always in and around advertising and PR, through to HR. Gosh, all with a large element of writing, and all with a lot of communication and people stuff.
Yeah.
Because the people that's always been the thing that I did well, ironically, because I'm incredibly awkward with people, but somehow I seem to make it work.
Yeah. And you mentioned you did fine art there. So at uni, you were at the Uni of Sunderland.
Yeah.
I understand. Why fine art? And then my second question on the fine art is, I understand it was you were specifically into paper cutting, and words were always central to your work. So is that where the love of words and writing started?
No. So my dad actually worked for a publisher, so we were always around books, but I didn't really read so much as a kid as listen to stuff. For example, when we used to go on long car journeys, my mum was obsessed with Eddie Izzard. So from like the age of about 7, I could recite the whole of Definite Article, and I still actually can. And my dad used to make up stories. So he's really creative. So we used to listen to stories and like make them up. And I had this typewriter that I was given. I used to bash out all this, ridiculous wordy crap and write endless diaries and put on little plays with my friends and make my parents pay, 50p to come and watch us do renditions of Starlight Express. And I feel incredibly sorry for them still. So words were always important. It was also always something I would do. I would write. It was kind of just part of me. But I'd always wanted to do musical theatre. I had a place to go and study musical theatre with the intention of going and doing it as a career. And I got really ill and ended up in hospital and had to drop out of my college where I was doing art textiles, or applied arts as they called it, I think. And I was, from going from the machine, I learned how to free stitch using an old sewing machine. So I used to write and create narrative on material, on card, using lots of different kind of mixed media. So I used to be writing stuff with the sewing machine, and that would form part of my work. And I used to write things that I would then sew into my work, or sew into outfits or garments or installations. So I was already doing some element of it, but it had always been the plan to go and do the theatre. And then, as I said, I got really ill and I was in hospital, so I had to do a load of my exams in hospital, and there were very limited resources to do art. You had to be watched I wasn't really allowed anything sharp or anything toxic. So when I was like, yeah, can I have a load of needles and some paint and some scalpels, please? They were like, no fucking way.
No. Yeah.
So I ended up making stuff out of like poster paint and paper mache. It was really quite horrendous. But while I was in hospital, one of the many things we had to do on a day-to-day basis was art therapy, and it was once a week, I think. And once you've kind of been there a certain amount of time, they'd let you go and do the kind of creative stuff as well as the awful one-to-one group horrendous stuff. I actually really liked it, and a lot of the people in there were like, this is just a load of dog shit. And I was like, you know what, I really like it. And still, actually, it was only, again, it was like poster paints and glue and little sticky feathers, but for me it was just, I found it really easy to express myself. And I would always write every night. So I wrote a diary and I wrote every single night for every night I was there. And then I would take those words and take the way I was feeling and just put it into something. And still, actually, when my parents moved, my dad called me up and he was like, yeah, so I've got this, I'm going through your room and I've got this, it's a paper mache shit with eyes. It's like, do you want it? I was like, that's a chrysalis. That's a butterfly coming out of a chrysalis. There's a lovely metaphor in that. And he was like, look, do you want the shit or not? So,
oh, it's wonderful.
But when I when I came out, I was like, I can't do musical theatre now. I'm not strong enough. The industry is too brutal, and I preferred to be putting my creativity in somewhere else. And I was just like, I love to write and I love to make stuff. So I then transferred and went and did this arts degree, and I started off at Hertfordshire for a year. The course wasn't quite right. I moved up north and found this amazing random fine art course that would just allow you to do whatever. And by then I'd kind of got into working with different medias. I'd done a lot with paper, and I'd realized that paper cutting was a really good way of kind of cutting the words into paper. So I ended up creating these big installations that were all the things that I'd written, and then I would cut them out, and then I would project them onto walls, and then cut out the shadows. And so it was kind of really, really iterative. And then the juxtaposition of, oh God, I used to use the word juxtaposition, so wanky. I was really into Yayoi Kusama. I still am, and it's the idea of like proliferation and the same repetitive task over and over and over and again. And I used to sit for hours and hours and hours cutting out. My final degree piece was like 400 paper feathers hung from the ceiling, and these massive, massive cutouts. I think each of them had taken me like between 50 and 60 hours to do.
Wow.
It was like a labor of love, but it was proper obsessive compulsive, healthy and not healthy in the same way, I would imagine.
Yeah.
So that's how I got into art, and that's how I took my writing that way.
So that's quite a journey then, from typing on a knackered typewriter to that, as you say, quite obsessive paper cutting processes to freelance writing.
Oh yeah, I mean there's a lot of gap in between. There's a lot of gap in between that. I didn't even start. I was still working as an EA until I think about 3 years ago. But all of my jobs have had a really strong element of writing in. So whether that's writing emails, writing briefs, whether it's writing job adverts, whether it's writing strategy for ads, whether it was just writing some agenda summaries or whatever, whether it was writing the ad copy itself when there were people not there, or the design brief or whatever. And then in my very last role, there was a huge amount of internal communication. So it was a lot of the really personal stuff. And I just love doing that. Then when I left that, I knew that I just it wasn't right. And then I came to writing. So in short, I had one of my many, but probably one of the most significant to that date. I had a breakdown basically, and I had to leave my job because I just could not cope. And it was literally starting again, because I left with nothing, and I just had to take time out just to learn how to be able to leave the house again and learn how to kind of start to function and use my brain. I'd lost the ability to read. I was writing, but I was in a really difficult place, and just writing at the time, it was poetry actually, and starting to get myself back, because I couldn't read. I was listening to podcasts, so I was listening to stories, I was hearing stories, I felt like I was around people. And that was when I kind of came out of that and realized that, writing was the thing I really wanted to do. And the way that I put that forward, and it didn't necessarily mean copywriting, it just meant how can I use the words that I have to help, like whether it's creative admin or whatever. But that's how I then fell into, I suppose, essentially being very, very loosely termed a writer.
And then was it at this stage or later on that you took on the role you define as being an industry cheerleader and using Twitter as a voice?
It was, I'd been listening to the podcast for a long time, and I'd had a Twitter account, but I was incredibly lonely. There was just no one, and I live on my own, and I felt so. And this is a thing throughout all of my life. Everywhere I've been, I've always felt just that I don't fit in. and that there's something about me that makes me stand out, and not in a good way. And that just by being in a room, I'm kind of, there's a problem and I'm the problem. And I've never been able to shake that off. And it's always made me very want to conform, but at the same time, as soon as I try, I kind of almost make myself more obvious. And I found it really, really difficult to navigate the world. And one of the things that I find really difficult is, knowing the right thing to say. And especially when you have been in and around an industry and following people who you really admire for a long time, but don't feel that you have anything valid to contribute to the conversation. But you also know what it's like to have somebody say something nice,
Yeah.
because it really, really means something. And when I kind of was sitting on my own at Twitter, and I just looked at Twitter because I was in a really, really dark place, and I just was so lonely. I was just, there's no one. And it sounds really, really vacuous, but just a couple of people, liking a tweet. And I just thought, I'm not saying anything interesting, but all these people are fascinating, and I think they're doing incredible stuff. So what's the one thing? What can I do? I felt hugely worthless. I battled with that a lot, not feeling like I contribute anything to the world, not feeling I've got value. I thought, what can I do? Like, the one thing I can do right now, I can't go and support people because I can't leave the house. I can't go and make, I can't write anything because I can't compose a sentence. But what can I do? What I can do is just say, you're doing a fucking awesome job. Keep going. Because anybody, and as big, or everybody has imposter syndrome. Everybody needs to be told, you know what, you're doing a good fucking job. Sometimes, and that was just the thing that I thought, what I can do is I can be in the wings again. I'm not born for the stage. I'm not one of these people who are going to be out there doing what they're doing, and I'm not going to be able to write amazing stuff like this. But what I am doing is experiencing and hearing those stories, and reading what they're saying, reading what they're writing, and listening to what they're saying, and thinking, you're doing something really awesome, and what you're doing is making a difference to me, and it's making me feel less lonely, and I know it'll be making other people feel less lonely, or feel inspired, or feel empowered, or feel whatever, or just laugh, or whatever. Just it that was the thing for me. And I kind of just, at the beginning, I just started, retweeting a couple of things and following a few people, and then people started kind of saying thank you, that's great. And I was just like, well, don't thank me, you're doing a fucking amazing job. Don't I'm doing nothing. But it always helps to have cheerleader in the wings.
Certainly in my experience, people who feel imposter syndrome, I find it tends to correlate perfectly with so many qualities. I find myself thinking that the people who should have imposter syndrome don't. There's that kind of Dunning-Kruger effect, isn't there?
Yeah,
And everyone on some scale has moments where they feel worthless, and you're absolutely right. Everyone needs support. Everyone needs each other, and it's great that I've heard you say you always felt like a bit of a misfit, and Twitter made you feel welcome and helped you find your tribe, and that's a wonderful, wonderful thing.
yeah, I think there's that element of, you even if I was allowed in the room, nobody really wanted me there, or I felt like I just didn't belong there. When I was a really little kid, I had these friends. I used to, the twins actually, so I was kind of almost the triplet in their group, but I looked very different to them. So that was kind of, I was growing up with somebody, and I was just very, very different, very different looking, but also they were kind of identical twins. And there was just this weird, I know that sounds strange, but it started from a really, really young age of me being kind of the third wheel. And they had these tea towels and aprons, and they had all these green frogs on them. And then one of the frogs was pink. And that has just stuck with me forever. I've always felt like the pink frog. And the problem is, I've always been in the room with a load of people who either are green frogs or are pretending to be. And I just have, it's impossible for me to be that. And I found it very difficult to know what to say that wouldn't be the wrong thing. I've got no filter. I also find it really, really difficult to relate to a lot of people because of the way that my brain works. I've got, I don't know if you want to cut this out or not, I've got borderline personality disorder. I'm not embarrassed to say anything about it. And
No, you shouldn't be.
it manifests in a lot of it. It means that the way that I perceive things in the world and the way that I understand what other people are saying and doing is slightly different. And it also means I have a very black and white thinking. Somebody once described it, the best way that somebody ever described it was, you have a loop on your head of like a film of all the awful things that you think about your life, all the things that you feel you've done wrong, or that you feel nobody wants, all your worst qualities playing in a kind of a loop. And the director hates everything about it, and he's just giving you this running commentary and narrative about how awful you are. And as soon as you try and counteract that with, well, actually, maybe what about a time that this good thing happened, or what about a time when I know you think that about yourself, but give me some examples. And then your director goes, okay, well, I'm just going to drop in a wheel of 20 different examples that we can give you as proof points. But so I found it very difficult to know where I fitted in. And Twitter was the first place where I felt like anybody gave a shit that I was there or even noticed. And it was kind of safe because I wasn't trying to be anything. I was just there to give people a pat on the back and just say, you know what, you're doing a fucking amazing job. Because that's what's been part of, I suppose, everything I've always done. There has always been that human element of, I'm here to be a support. I'm here because I believe in you. And genuinely, all the people that I've worked with that I've had to support, I've genuinely cared so much about making sure that they know that they are valued, because I think I've not felt it. And that's a large part because I have not valued myself. And I think that's, when you don't have that to boost you, it's very, very difficult to find it in different circumstances. So that was kind of where Twitter came. And I then met loads of random connections through there. And it's all a little bit of serendipity, really, the way that connections have. And I met people who had the same sort of values and liked the same sort of things. And it was good because I didn't need to go and see them. I didn't need to go and be in a busy bar. I didn't need to go and do something socially anxious, so I didn't need to do anything. I just needed to occasionally, give a kind of awkward wave. And for an introvert who really struggles to know what to say and whether they're going to say the right thing or not, the gift is just, oh fucking hell, it's the gift that keeps on giving.
Absolutely. It's sad to hear how kind of exhausting I think it must be. Certainly that metaphor you used of a director replaying all of those bad kind of opinions you might hold on yourself. And I know and equally hope that, and I'm under no illusion, there'll be dozens, if not hundreds, of fans of yours listening to this episode. And in fact, not solely via Twitter, but even if I just think of previous Call to Action pod guests such as Amy Keane, Vicky Ross, Jane Evans, Ryan Woolman. I mean, they're all really important people who in your world and in my world and in our kind of shared world. And they're all friends. Like, it's amazing the community that exists, albeit it may have started via Twitter, it may have started in real life at a Copywriters Unite. I know you've been to one of the events that Vicky runs. It's a wonderful thing, and I only hope that gives you power in some way.
Yeah, I mean, I think finding a community, I think a lot of that is I kind of feel sometimes, you feel like you're wrong, but it's not you that's wrong. You're just in the wrong room. And I think it's just often it takes you a long, long time to find the right room. And also, it's not my metaphor. I can't take any credit for that. But it's it just makes a lot of sense. And Twitter has been incredible. And the people I've met through there. And I mean, Ryan, I was sitting in listening to him record a podcast just randomly the day after he'd had drinks with Drayton Bird, and the 2 days after he'd had the Copywriters Unite or something like that. I mean, it was like a 2-day, and then he was drinking champagne on this. It was on TFR.
Yeah, that's right.
So that was the first I met of him, and he was just absolutely, and we've just been friends ever since. And Jane, I met on Twitter. I'd suggested a road trip to the Copywriters Unite in Brighton. Because Copywriters Unite was the first social-ish thing I'd done in about 8 months, and Vicky'd been so wonderful, and Emily has always been awesome on Twitter anyway, and just they kind of gave me the confidence to just go along and see. And if I couldn't do it, then I couldn't do it, and it was awesome. And my dad comes with me now as my date, and I just love it. And I know people who I've worked with since, who I've met there. Jane said she'd come to the Brighton road trip, and I said, okay, well, I'm going to get this train. She said, no, I'm going to drive. I said, fine. So we ended up in a car in a massive drive down to Brighton, and the rest is history. We just clicked, and she's amazing. And I've been working with her now since for about over a year. She's fucking phenomenal. She's kind of my spirit mother and friend, and just an amazing. She mentors. She's just an amazing person to work with, and
She's awesome. Yeah.
yeah, and she's been really helpful to my writing, and Vicky's been fabulous. Everybody's just been great.
Have you got any dirt on Ryan?
Any dirt? Oh God,
Yeah.
I think any dirt he's got, he's aired already. I don't think there's much that he. I don't think there's anything that I can tell you that he hasn't gone into already. I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'll keep looking.
Yeah. Well,
That's all right. Well, you're our second dedicated person guest after Murray Calder, who was
oh,
who was the episode.
he's just such a legend.
Oh yeah, no, he's a great man. He's a great man. Can we talk about Sit Fucking Still? So I mentioned it on the intro, your isolated talk, and it got, quite rightly, an incredible response, and it still sends shivers down my spine when I hear it. So tell me about that. What inspired your talk?
I'm still really amazed, because I didn't even think you were going to put it up. When I heard about what you were doing, I thought it was amazing, and I'd started to write a little bit, and through lockdown, I must say, I don't know how everybody else has found it, but I find writing a really emotional process, and I kind of give everything, and with lockdown and a load of other stuff that was going on in my life, I was finding it impossible to write. I found it really, really hard. It just stripped everything of me. But I was reading for like I've read so much. I tell you, I've had more baths and read more books in lockdown than I have in my whole life put together.
Amazing.
But I read about it, and I watched a couple of the talks, and I just thought, oh, that's such a. And I thought, what would I write about? And when I write something, I tend to either get an idea from a book or a quote or something. And I'd already written a piece a while ago that had really stuck with me, because Claire Barry once told me, you need to, because I told her, I just get writer's block all the time. I never know what to say. And she said, what, you just got to sit, you got to fucking sit with it. And she was like, just go to a cafe, just sit, just don't think you're going to write or whatever. And it didn't. I didn't end up writing amazing stuff, but just the idea of sitting with it. And I don't mean like sitting down necessarily and watching the world go by or whatever. I just mean almost being aware of the emotion that you're in and just acknowledging it. And in any particular way, what is it to just take stock of where you are and say, that's okay. It's okay. I'm feeling like this, or I'm not feeling like this, or I'm anxious, or I'm this. Just holding it and then trying to let it go, but just acknowledging it and just letting it sit with you for a bit. And that was something that I'd really got to through lockdown. And I'm not saying it was related to lockdown, but through I was in a pretty shitty state before lockdown, and then lockdown happened, and it just knocked me completely sideways. And one of the things in getting back up again was about just having to literally be with just me and just my brain and just my emotions and nothing else to distract from it. Nothing, kind of no real coping mechanisms. And I think what I wanted to say was just to everyone, I think we get bombarded with so much stuff. You should be productive. You've got more hours in the day. You've got all this time now. What are you going to do with it? And I think for me, I was just like, well, my brain just went, well, we're going to shut down now. Yeah, there's absolutely no way you're getting anything creative out of me. I started a million things and I just couldn't finish it. I was like, oh, maybe I'll do this, maybe I'll do that. Nope, I'll try and I'll do some paper cutting. Nope, that didn't happen. And I just thought it would be really, it would be so nice for someone to just say, it's all right, just fucking stop for a bit. That was what I needed to hear. I think that's the thing. One of the first pieces I wrote when I started to blog again was about how we hear a load of kind of stories about people who've broken in some way or fallen apart or failed, but we very rarely hear about the rebuild, or we very rarely hear from them in the rebuild. We always hear once they've come out the other side, and normally they've got an amazing business or they've really completely restarted their life, which is incredible. But I think sometimes it's okay, it would be nice to hear from the people who still, some days they just can't get up, and some days they can't write their own name, and some days they forget to wear pants, like, just because their brains are so, it is. And with lockdown, what that did was it knocked everyone into a space where that could suddenly be very possible. And for a lot of people that was the norm, and they were managing that anyway, and for other people it was just like, this isn't, everything has been taken away. So I think that was what I wanted to say. And so I just sat down and wrote it. I've never had any intention of turning it into a video. And I remember sending you a message saying, like, I've just written something and I haven't written in weeks. I have no, I know I'm not going to submit it. I know you've not asked me to do a video or anything, but thank you for giving me something, because I've now written something and it means something to me and it's stuck. So thanks. And I knew there was a video that you needed to do. I thought, well, maybe I can do a video. I thought, well, I'm not going to be on video. Absolutely no way. And I can't do a video. There's no, I can't just blank a room. I just thought, I don't know. And then, as is, I think, common with a lot of people, I woke up at 3 a.m. in the morning and just went, oh, I know. There's a GIF in this. There's a load of GIFs in this.
Yeah.
And
you unloaded your whole arsenal of Schitt's Creek.
Oh God, there's just too many. There is too many.
Oh, but it's so good. And for someone who clearly has a lot of self-doubt and questions your ability in so many ways, completely unfairly. What did you feel about the response? I don't mean that to sound like, ooh, were you overwhelmed? All I mean is, did the response help you appreciate the talent and what a great talk it was?
I think what it did was it's always lovely to hear. I think all I do, so when I write, the process is for me, because it takes everything out of me. But as soon as it's on the page, for me, it's the shittest thing I've ever read, and I can't understand when it's the process is the bit that I need and I enjoy and that breaks me and puts me back together again. But once it's on the page, I really think I'm reading a piece of shit. So it's once it's on the page, it's kind of almost, I can't connect to it. But I write stuff that I just want people to feel and people to relate to it. I just want it to be human, and the process is for me. The outcome is not for me at all. The outcome is for whoever reads it and needs to read it. So when people listen to the isolated talk and said, I needed to hear that, or I relate to that, or that really that was good for me for 5 minutes today, that meant everything. That's all I did it for. I did it because it was what I thought I needed to hear, and what other people might need to hear too. And it turned out it was. So, I mean, I'm still amazed at how many people have watched it. I mean, having said that, it is like the shortest one on there. So, I mean, it's an easy go in, right? And there are so many people who've said to me, I started watching that Schitt's Creek. It's actually really good. And I was like, well, thank you. Even my parents have started
Oh no,
watching it.
it's divisive in this household. It's
Really?
divisive. I'm a fan, but no, Soph's just not into it at all. But so not long after, I mean, I must say, firstly, we'll link to your brilliant isolated talk in this episode listing, and I encourage everyone listening to watch it, even if you've already watched it. And then not long after, I heard you narrate beautifully again at Amy Keene's awesome House of Weeds book launch. And what was so brilliant about that launch, not only was it remote because it was during lockdown, but there were so many people narrating Amy's brilliant poetry to a really high standard. And I'll never forget, there was a guy called Rishi, I think his name was, and he was absolutely sensational. And I remember thinking, oh my God, who can follow that? and then up stepped Jem, and you absolutely smashed it out of the park. It was like an 80s movie. I was on mute whooping from here because it was so good.
So Amy basically got in touch because I've known her on Twitters, but never really had a conversation with her, like a full one. And she was just like, I'm doing this book launch. I've never heard your voice before. Like, would you read? I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, yeah. And she's so talented. I love her writing, but obviously I'd never read her poetry. And I was like, absolutely. She's like, I've got the poem in mind. She sent it to me. I was like, that's just gorgeous. I love the story behind it. It's brilliant. And she said, we're going to do it. So I didn't know who else was reading, and thank God I didn't know like who I had to follow or that I had to go last after all of that, because it was, as you say, everybody's poem was so perfect for the way their voice worked. But mainly, as you know, I was just glad that I didn't say dog whore. That's one of
Yeah, you messaged me just before your turn, I think, and said exactly that.
it's
wonderful.
I had all my tabs open, and then to prepare for doing this, I closed them all down and had some images on my desktop, and I saved one of them called dog whore, or in all caps left in all caps. And I just thought, oh no, I'm just going to say dog whore. So basically, through everybody else's poem, I was just like, just don't say dog whore, don't say dog whore, don't say dog whore. And I just thought, I'm going to say fucking dog whore. And then after it finished, I didn't know how it had gone. I didn't know how I'd read it, but I was just so relieved I hadn't said dog whore. Sorry, if my parents listen to this, I've just said dog whore like 20 times over and over. Sorry about that.
Jem, I've got some listener questions I would like to put to you.
Right? I'm amazed.
Asking the general public for their opinion, be it on Brexit or boat names, is notoriously fraught with danger, but we have two to put to you. So, Chris says, I see from your website that you are a hoarder of random facts. What's your favourite random fact you've come across lately?
Oh, one of my favourite classics is that when an alpaca gives birth, it's called an unpacking. That is one of my favourite facts of all time.
Oh my word! And how true is that?
It's 100% true.
Oh
It's
my word!
It's true. It's absolutely wonderful. There's another one that's really good, which is the piracy that used to be. Piracy is a crime when you go to the cinema. And when you used to go to cinema years ago, and they used to have that thing saying the copyright, like there was a little film that said, oh, you can't film this, it's copyright, don't accept it. Do you know the advert I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Well, that advert like showed in cinemas, and then the guy who wrote the music was like, hang on a second, you didn't ask me to leave that. So they were actually breaching copyright by pinching music for that.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That's another really, really nice one. I mean, there's so many good ones, but I think the alpaca one really, that is right up there.
Yeah, I've just written that down because I don't ever want to forget it.
Oh no, it's a great one.
Question 2. So Anna must know you are the GIF queen. She asks, what makes for a good GIF?
Oh, the context. You need to get, but it's also the search. So it's the context of how you want to say it. For me, often I feel like the gifts basically respond in the way that my body does, because I can't do poker face at all, and if something happens, my whole face or my whole body will react in that way. So often, like, I think if you're responding, you've got the perfect gif is a response in the way that you would respond, or whoever you're gifting as would respond. But what allows you to find that is it's all about search. When somebody uses a brilliant gif, it's proper mic drop moment, I feel.
Yeah. So, Jem, the final part of the interview is our 4 pertinent poses, which you would have heard before. Starting with, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Probably same advice I give to myself now. I do think that whole it's not you that's wrong, you're just in the wrong room. I think your difference is your superpower. I think we need people who see, feel, sense, experience the world in different ways. And if all the voices aren't out there, then we're not hearing the real story. We're not hearing every part of it. Also, something that I do remind myself a lot, and my Daffy always says this. It's not weird. It's wonderfully odd, and I think that's really, really nice. I think if you feel you're weird, you're not.
Yeah.
Everyone that I love, everyone who fascinates me, everyone who's ever moved me is wonderfully different in their own way. And if you can find a way to connect with people when you find it impossible to connect, and when you've been told you can't, or you shouldn't, or you don't deserve to, I think knowing that the fact that you're different is your strength, and you just need to learn how to harness it and find the people who want to see it, who want you in the room.
On that first point, James Victorian often makes a similar point about weirdness. He says it's your source, it's a superpower. Never let anyone shame it out of you.
He's brilliant. His Vector function is brilliant.
Yeah, I adore that man.
He's fantastic.
Number 2, if you could banish one thing from the industry, what would it be and why?
There's all the standard that I don't really need to give you a list of all the many, many, many things that I would ban. But actually, I'm going to go with a personal pet peeve for this, and it would relate to any industry. But it's Slack.
Yeah.
Somebody once described it as the place where meetings go to die. And I just think it's just a way of keeping everyone connected, but really just working 24 hours a day with more notifications than they would get emails.
Oh, I'm just so distracted.
It's absolute. I think it's horrendous. I can't bear it.
Yeah, I think there's a few of us who would agree with you 100% there. Although at the same time, there's a lot of people I admire who do lean on it as a critical part of their process. But yeah, I've never managed to get it to work.
No.
Number 3, are there any books that you can recommend to our listeners?
I was thinking about this, and I read so many books. Like, I read a whole book. I read a whole book in the bath.
Wow.
I just did that yesterday, and the day before, actually. I thought what I'd do. I wanted to think of one that I don't think has been mentioned before, and I wanted to do one on writing, because I recently read. It's just come out, and it's called "Consider This" by Chuck Palahniuk, who wrote Palahniuk, who wrote Fight Club, which is a brilliant book, and he's a fiction writer, and I'm not a fiction writer, and I'm not a fiction reader either. I read memoirs, and I love, I suppose, essay collections and documentary stuff and journalistic stuff. But the way that he explained his processes and kind of gave you anecdotes from people in the industry was the best book I've read on writing. That for me in a long, long time, I would massively recommend that to anyone
Cool.
who's struggling with that. And on a creative side, I know you have got some swag today, but The Power of Purity is fantastic for like ideas.
Yeah.
It's just really good to just pick up, and it's so fucking beautiful as well.
Yeah,
It's
that
so
Denton chap's talented.
it's so gorgeous, and it's just a really nice way to kind of get yourself to think in a different way. So those sorts of books. But then apart from that, I have read so many amazing memoirs recently. There's a page on my, because I'm completely anal about these things. Every single book I've read for the last, what, I think we're coming up to 2 years now, I have photographed and put a link to where you can buy it on my website, so you can see exactly what I'm reading at any one time or what the last book I read was. I've read some incredible stuff recently by some amazing people. So Hot Milk was one that I read about 3 weeks ago, and I read The Cost of Living, which is Deborah Levy's memoir, because Amy Keane says, "Have you read that? Because it's fucking amazing," and it was. The Lonely City by Olivia Lang. I read Jason Green's book about his son who died, on his daughter, sorry, and that was just beautiful. Oh God, I've just read so many. Alice Levine, Rootbound. If you like memoirs and you like essay collections and Coming Undone, which is what I read in the bath yesterday, which is Terry White, who's of Empire magazine, who just writes incredibly. There's loads and loads of stuff on there, so you could put a link if you want, if people want to read.
Yeah, definitely. Fantastic. Okay, well, we'll link to all of those books, and more if you can share that link. Finally, we always dedicate every episode to someone, so it's your turn to do so.
Oh, I found this really hard because, like, I could dedicate it to the whole of the Twitters or the whole of the Copywriters Unite guys or everybody who does Bright 52, or just there's so many people. But I wanted to choose somebody who hasn't been mentioned, hasn't been on podcasts, doesn't get, uh, isn't somebody that people might have already heard somebody dedicate something to or heard them speak. And then actually I had two people, so it's two people who are very important to me in my life, and one of them is my Daffy, who is just awesome. He just doesn't give up on me. He's had this unwavering belief that something good is gonna come out of it, and even though I fuck up over and over again, he's a legend. And the other one is a guy called Matt Sibley, who is a copywriter, and he's very talented, and he is an awesome, awesome mate, awesome friend. I met him through the Twitters, and he's just finished his level 4 copywriting. I think if I've got that wrong, I'm really sorry, Matt. But he's going to be looking for jobs soon, and somebody's going to snap him up because he's brilliant. He's building his portfolio now. He's an awesome guy. He's on the Twitters. He's supporting other people. He's collaborating with people. He's doing as much as he possibly can to really make his way. And I just think he deserves a shout out because he's not somebody already being championed, and he really deserves to be. He doesn't have enough confidence in his ability, and I really think he should.
Well said, and I'll second that as well, because I don't know Matt as well as you, but I do know Matt, and he's a lovely, talented chap. So as our final call to action, we will list on this episode all of the books you've mentioned. So that's Consider This, Power of Puerility, The Cost of Living, The Lonely City. We'll include all the links to your website. I meant to talk about it earlier, but I think we've run out of time. Your lovely habit of putting your googly eyes on things. We'll link to those too. But how else can people get more Gem Higgins?
Well, I've written a few things. I haven't written for a while because I can't at the moment. I'm still sitting still and reading. But my Medium is where I put all my writing, and then my website. I'm on the Twitters. I'm on LinkedIn because everyone has to be, don't they? I'm on Instagram. My Instagram is basically just books and my dog. Yeah, if you like sausage dogs, then come to Instagram because she's quite photogenic. She's an absolute cunt, but she's She's. Oh, I got so close. I got so close, didn't I? We nearly
So
finished.
close. Finish line is in sight, and then you had to call your dog a cunt.
Oh, I'm so sorry, but she's dead cute. So, Instagram, Twitter's my medium, and I guess my isolated talk and LinkedIn. But yeah, I'm always there.
Amazing. Jem, it's been a glorious hour, and I've loved it. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I really hope I haven't put every single one of your general listeners off.
Oh no, it's an absolute pleasure. It's not as if you called your dog a cunt or something.
No, I know. I would never do that. Right? Promise you I wouldn't say it.
Finally, thank you to everybody listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do share it and review the pod. We really value your support. Please keep questions and guest requests coming in. To get in touch, it's easy to find Gasp online. You can check out CTA Pod on Instagram or just email hello@calltoaction.co.
I can't get no call to action. I can't get no call to action, but I try, and I try, and I try, and I try.